Olivia, don't open it.
It's probably another complaint. Who sent this?
Rain came down over Manhattan in long silver sheets that night, turning the city into something half real. Taxis crawling gold and red through wet streets, billboards blurred behind falling water, thunder circling somewhere above the skyline, like a warning that hadn't quite arrived yet. At the top of Sterling Tower, 48 floors above all of it, Olivia Sterling stood at a wall of glass and watched her city disappear into the storm. She was 28 years old, and she looked exactly like what she was, the woman who ran one of the most talked-about clean energy companies in the country. Ivory suit, dark hair pulled back into a ponytail so severe it could have been armor, green eyes that didn't waver. She had spent years learning how to stand like this, spine straight, expression calm, until the posture became indistinguishable from the person. But her heart was hammering. On the table behind her sat an envelope, plain, white. No stamp, no name, no fingerprint anyone could trace. Just 6 words in handwriting she didn't recognize. You built your empire on lies. It was the 3rd one in 2 weeks, and this one hadn't come through the mail. It had been sitting inside her own private office, in a room only a handful of people could enter. Her chief legal officer, Mason Reed, stood near the door, his usual composure cracked at the edges. He'd known Olivia for 7 years. Since before the company nearly went under, since before either of them had grey in their hair or bags under their eyes from the hours they kept. He was, in every way that mattered, family. Someone got past the cameras, he told her. Past the keycards, past 2 separate checkpoints. This isn't some disgruntled customer firing off angry emails, Olivia. Whoever this is knows this building better than the people who designed it. She didn't answer right away. Her mind had gone, instead, to her father. Richard Sterling had built this company from nothing, a small, stubborn dream about solar panels that nobody believed in until, suddenly, everybody did. When he died 5 years ago, Olivia had inherited more than a company. She'd inherited a name, a legacy, and, she was only now beginning to understand, possibly a few secrets she hadn't yet been told. Sterling Innovations built affordable solar systems for hospitals and schools and neighborhoods that couldn't otherwise afford them. It had made her rich. It had made her a headline. It had also made her enemies, rivals who claimed she stole contracts, politicians who questioned how fast she'd grown, strangers online who insisted she'd inherited success she never earned. None of that had ever frightened her. This did. "I won't let some coward with a pen control my life," she said. "This isn't only your decision anymore," Mason said quietly. That was when a second voice answered from the doorway, low, even, entirely unbothered by the storm outside or the fear inside the room. "He's right." Olivia turned. The man who walked in filled the doorway the way certain people just do, not with size exactly, though he had that too, but with a stillness that made the room feel smaller. Dark charcoal suit, black shirt beneath it. Early 30s, maybe. Broad-shouldered, athletic, a thin, pale scar cutting through his left eyebrow that gave his whole face a permanent seriousness. His eyes moved across the windows, the exits, the corners of the room, checking, always checking, before finally settling on her. "This is Ethan Cole," Mason said. "Former military. He handles protection for people in situations like yours. I didn't hire a bodyguard." "You didn't have to," Mason said. "The board did." Ethan stopped a few feet away, close enough that Olivia had to tilt her chin slightly to meet his eyes. "I've read the threat reports," he said. "The building logs, your public calendar. Until we know who's doing this, you need to assume they already know where you live, where you work, and how you get from one to the other. You always introduce yourself this way, by trying to scare people. Only the ones who aren't scared enough. I take my safety seriously. That's not the same as taking it correctly." The words landed somewhere Olivia didn't expect them to. Mason, sensing the temperature of the room, excused himself and slipped out, leaving the two of them alone with the rain hammering the windows. "I have a company to run," Olivia said. "Meetings, Public appearances. I'm not going to disappear into my apartment because someone likes writing cryptic notes. I'm not asking you to disappear. Good. I'm telling you your schedule is about to change, starting tonight. Her eyes narrowed. You work for me. Mr. Cole. I work to keep you alive. Those two things aren't always the same. For the first time all evening, her fear gave way to something sharper, irritation maybe, or the particular fury of a woman who has spent her whole adult life refusing to be told what she can and cannot do. I built this company by ignoring people who told me my limits, she said. I don't intend to start listening now. Ethan's expression didn't so much as flicker. And I've stood over the graves of people who believed the exact same thing, he said, right up until it killed them. Lightning cracked outside, throwing both their silhouettes against the glass for half a second, gone as quickly as it came. Ethan set a small, secure phone down on the table between them. You carry this everywhere. You answer when I call, every time. You don't leave a building without telling me first. You don't change your route without my approval. Is that everything? One more thing. What? Stop pretending you're not afraid. Her jaw tightened. She said nothing. He turned toward the door. I'll be outside your building at 6 tomorrow morning. I don't leave until 7. You do now. And then he was gone, leaving her alone with the rain and the envelope and the uncomfortable, creeping suspicion that the infuriating stranger might be entirely right about her. Dawn broke pale gold over the city the next morning, and Ethan was exactly where he said he'd be, leaning against a black armored SUV outside Olivia's townhouse at 6 sharp, eyes tracking rooftops and parked cars, and the handful of early pedestrians hurrying past with their heads down. Olivia emerged at 6:23, camel coat, navy dress, coffee in hand, in absolutely no hurry. You're late, Ethan said. I'm the CEO. People wait for me. Threats don't. He opened the rear door. She walked past it toward the driver's seat instead. I'm driving myself. No, you're not. It's my car. It's not armored. I've driven myself for 10 years, Mr. Cole. And today makes 10 years and 1 day. She glared at him for a long moment. He simply waited, unmoved, until she surrendered and climbed into the back seat. The ride to Sterling Tower passed in near silence. Ethan sat up front, scanning mirrors, murmuring quiet instructions to the driver. Olivia pretended to work on her tablet, all while noticing, despite herself, the careful, exhausting thoroughness with which he studied every single intersection they passed through. At the office, Ethan checked the underground entrance before letting her out, walked her through the lobby, rode the elevator with her, escorted her all the way to her desk. Employees whispered as they passed. Olivia hated every second of the attention. Throughout the day, Ethan quietly dismantled her routine piece by piece. Her usual breakfast delivery, replaced by a vetted private chef. A scheduled walk in Central Park with an investor, cancelled outright. An innocuous cardboard box left outside a conference room, full of nothing more sinister than promotional notepads, treated as a potential threat and searched before anyone was allowed near it. By evening, Olivia had reached the end of her patience. You cannot put my entire life on lockdown every time someone leaves a box in a hallway, she snapped as they stepped into her office. That box was in a restricted area. It was stationary. We didn't know that until we checked. You humiliated me in front of my own board. I kept you away from an unidentified object. That's the job. You enjoy this, she said. Don't you? Controlling every part of someone else's life. Something in Ethan's face went cold. This isn't control, he said. It's prevention. Maybe to you. To anyone who's seen what happens when prevention fails. Olivia paused. There was something underneath his voice just then. Something that wasn't arrogance at all, she realized, but a kind of vigilance built out of memory, out of loss. What happened to you? She asked, gentler now. That's not your concern. You told me to stop pretending I'm not afraid. Maybe you should take your own advice. His jaw worked, but he said nothing. Instead, he reached into his jacket and set something new on her desk. Another envelope. Her anger evaporated instantly. Where did this come from? Your townhouse. Someone left it on your pillow. Inside was a photograph. Olivia, leaving the office 2 nights before, her face circled in red ink. Beneath it, 3 words. I'm getting closer. She sank slowly into her chair. My home has an alarm system, she whispered. It never triggered. What does that mean? It means whoever got in probably had the code. Her eyes lifted to his. Only 5 people know that code. Then we start with those 5. That night, Ethan searched her townhouse floor by floor. Windows, vents, closets, every device that could hold a camera or a microphone, while Olivia trailed behind him in silence, her usual confidence replaced by something quieter and more fragile. In the library, he found her standing beside her grandmother's old piano, staring at a wall of family photographs. In one, a much younger Olivia stood laughing between her parents on a beach somewhere, 16 years old and entirely unguarded. You looked happy, Ethan said. I was 16. What changed? Life. That's usually what people say when they don't want to actually answer the question. She studied him, really studied him, for the first time. You ask a lot of questions for someone who won't answer any of his own. I need to understand your routines, your relationships. No, she said. You need to understand the town. That's all anyone sees anymore. The board sees a company, reporters see a headline, now you see a security problem. You're not a target to me. Then what do you see? Something flickered across his face, something he didn't let finish forming. You should sleep, he said instead, moving toward the door. Will you? I'll be downstairs. All night? That's the job. She looked at him standing there in the amber light, shoulders straight despite the exhaustion carved into his eyes. Good night, Ethan, she said, the first time she'd used his first name. He paused in the doorway, something in him softening just slightly. Good night, Olivia. 3 quiet days passed. No new threats. Slowly, almost against her will, Olivia adjusted to having Ethan permanently within arm's reach, though she still argued with him about nearly everything. Driving routes, meeting locations, and most fiercely, whether she'd be allowed to attend a charity gala at the Metropolitan Museum where she was scheduled to give the keynote address. Ethan called it too exposed. Olivia called it a promise she intended to keep. She won. The museum that night glittered under crystal chandeliers, marble halls filled with gowns and tuxedos, and the low murmur of 500 well-dressed guests. Olivia wore emerald green, her dark hair falling loose over one shoulder. Ethan, in a black tuxedo that did nothing to disguise the watchfulness in his eyes, stood near enough to intervene and far enough to look like just another guest. You look uncomfortable, Olivia said when he approached. I am. The tuxedo, the 500 strangers, 12 exits, one of you. She smiled, despite herself. You could try enjoying the party. I could also juggle knives. Neither improves security. Mason arrived to tell her the mayor was ready for her introduction. As she moved toward the stage, Ethan caught her wrist. Say, sir, gently, but firmly. What is it? She whispered. Man near the north exit. He's been watching you for 6 minutes without looking away. He murmured something into his earpiece, directing another officer toward the stranger, but the man didn't wait. He moved, not toward an exit, toward her. His hand went into his jacket. Ethan didn't wait to see what came out of it. He pulled Olivia behind him, just as the crowd began to scream and scatter, and a sharp metallic crack sounded from somewhere above the stage. Not a gun, a remote device, and above them, one of the enormous crystal chandeliers groaned, shuddered, and began to fall. Move! Ethan wrapped both arms around her and threw them both across the marble floor as the chandelier crashed down exactly where they'd been standing seconds before. Glass exploded across the stage. Smoke curled up through the lights. The quartet's music died mid-note. Olivia lay beneath him, stunned, ears ringing, Ethan's body a wall between her and the falling debris. Olivia, look at me. She opened her eyes. His face was inches from hers, blood trickling from a cut near his temple that he didn't seem to notice at all. Are you hurt? I don't think so. Stay down. Security swarmed the hall. The stranger vanished into the chaos. Ethan lifted her, arm firm around her shoulders, and guided her through a service corridor toward the exit and the waiting armored SUV. It wasn't until the car was speeding away that the shaking finally caught up with her. "You saved me," she whispered. "That's the job." "No! You Before anyone else did. I saw him watching you. What if you hadn't?" He didn't answer. Her hands wouldn't stop trembling. Ethan reached across the space between them and covered them with his own. "Breathe," he said. "In through your nose. Hold it. Let it out slowly. Look at me." She did, followed the rhythm of his voice until the panic loosened its grip, until for the first time since the threats began, she didn't feel like a company, or a headline, or a liability. She felt like a person, seen, entirely, by one man. Then he let go and turned toward the window, and the distance between them returned, as if it had never left. The gala attack changed everything. Police identified the attacker from security footage. Caleb Ross, a former Sterling Innovations engineer, dismissed months earlier for falsifying safety data that could have caused solar batteries to catch fire in schools. But Caleb couldn't have gotten into Olivia's office or home alone. Someone on the inside had helped him. Until investigators found that person, Olivia would be relocated to a remote, fortified safe house on a lake in the Hudson Valley, all stone and cedar and glass, isolated from the nearest town by miles of pine forest. To Olivia, it felt like exile. To Ethan, it felt, for the first time, like a place he could actually defend. Their first morning there, mist curled low over the water, while Olivia, in an oversized sweater and grey sweatpants, looking nothing like the polished executive from the tower, lost a battle of wills with the coffee machine. "You outnegotiated a room full of investors last month," Ethan said, watching her struggle. "And the coffee machine is beating you. It has too many buttons. It has three unnecessary buttons." He reached past her and pressed one. The machine hissed to life. Olivia turned and found him closer than either of them expected. The space between them suddenly charged in a way no security protocol could account for. He stepped back first. "Black? With cream. That explains your poor judgment generally." She laughed, a real laugh, startled and unguarded, the kind she hadn't allowed herself in longer than she could remember. "What?" she asked, catching him staring. "Nothing. You almost smiled. That would be unprofessional. Terrifying, even." Over the following days, life at the safe house settled into a strange, quiet rhythm. Olivia ran her company through secure video calls. Ethan trained with the small security team, checked the perimeter, drilled contingencies. In the evenings, they ate dinner together, first in careful, practical silence, and then, slowly, in conversation that grew more personal by the night. Olivia told him about her father, brilliant, distant, a man who'd taught her negotiation tactics before he ever taught her to drive, who praised achievements and rarely, if ever, offered affection. When he died, she'd inherited not the empire the world assumed, but a company drowning quietly in debt. "Everyone thought I'd been handed a gift," she said one night by the fire. "The truth is, I inherited something already collapsing. And you saved it. I didn't have a choice. There's always a choice. Not when failing means proving every doubter right." Ethan watched the firelight move across her face. "Who are you still trying to prove wrong?" She thought about it. "My father, maybe. Except he's gone. Then who? Maybe myself." The fire cracked softly between them. "What about you?" she asked. "Who are you trying to prove wrong?" He was quiet for a long moment before he finally answered. 3 years ago, I was assigned to protect a senator and his family overseas. There was intelligence suggesting a threat. I recommended he cancel a public appearance. He didn't listen. What happened? A car broke through the outer barrier during the visit. We got the senator out, but his younger brother was separated in the chaos. I made the call to move the principal instead of going back for him. Because that was the job. It was the correct decision. His voice had gone very quiet. He was 24. He had a wife, a newborn daughter. You couldn't save everyone. I know what the official report says. That's not what I said, Olivia told him gently. You couldn't save everyone. That doesn't make you guilty. For years, people had praised Ethan's discipline, his composure, his judgment under fire. No one had ever told him that surviving an impossible choice wasn't the same thing as failing. The silence between them deepened into something neither of them was ready to name. Is that why you keep everyone at arm's length? Olivia asked softly. I don't. You do. I'm sitting by a fire, discussing my past with a client. Exactly. You called me a client. That's what you are. The words came out colder than he meant them to. Olivia stood, carried her glass to the kitchen without another word, and left Ethan alone with the fire and the certainty that he'd just hurt someone he was supposed to be protecting, and the quieter, more dangerous certainty that his heart had already crossed a line his duty required him never to touch. A storm rolled through the valley, rain hammering the windows, wind bending the pines nearly sideways. The power flickered before the backup generator caught. Ethan was in the security room when, one by one, the exterior cameras began to fail. Team 1, report, static. He tried again. Nothing. He found Olivia already on the stairs, robe pulled over her clothes. What's happening? We've lost external comms. Then the lights died completely, plunging the cabin into total darkness. Ethan pulled her behind the stone fireplace, just as a window shattered somewhere near the kitchen. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, moving through the dark. A flashlight beam swept the floor, and then, unmistakably, a familiar voice. Olivia. Her breath caught. Mason? Ethan held her back, calling out for identification. Mason explained. The outside security team had been attacked. He'd used the emergency backup route to reach the property. A route, Ethan realized with cold certainty, that he had never actually shared with the board. The flashlight beam rounded the corner, and Mason stepped into view, soaked from the rain, a pistol in his hand. Step away from her, Cole. So it was you, Olivia whispered. What followed was 7 years of friendship collapsing in real time. Mason's father, it turned out, had designed the original battery technology that built Sterling Innovations from nothing, only for Richard Sterling to patent it under his own name and push the man out entirely, taking credit, taking fortune, taking everything. Mason had spent years waiting for the right moment to make Olivia feel exactly what his family had felt, watching everything they loved disappear. Caleb Ross had simply been useful, a desperate, angry man easy to manipulate, made to believe Olivia herself had ruined his life. Mason had never intended anyone to die under that chandelier. He'd only wanted Olivia standing beneath it as a warning. Now he wanted more. The company's private archive, proof of Richard Sterling's theft, transferred entirely into his control, and Olivia's public confession that her family's empire had been built on stolen work. What happens to Caleb? Olivia asked. Mason's silence answered for him. You're going to kill him, she said, understanding at last. Ethan spoke calmly, buying time. This doesn't end with you owning the company. Police are already tracing the internal access. They'll blame Caleb. They'll find your fingerprints too. Mason's grip on the pistol tightened. Move away from her. Olivia, remarkably, stepped forward instead of back. If my father stole from your family, I will expose it myself. I will make it right. You expect me to believe that? You watched me rebuild this company from nothing my father ever believed possible. You watched me risk everything for programs he never would have approved. You had 7 years to become the man your father needed you to be. Instead, you became the man you hated. Something in Mason's resolve wavered. Just enough. A sound came from the hallway behind him. He turned instinctively, and Ethan moved, striking his wrist and forcing the pistol to fire harmlessly into the ceiling before the two men crashed to the floor. Trained and faster, Ethan pinned him quickly. That was when Caleb emerged from the shadows, soaked and furious, a metal bar in both hands, hearing enough of Mason's confession to understand the truth. He had been used and was meant to take the fall for everything. You told me she ruined my life, Caleb said. She did, Mason said quickly. Finish this. But Olivia met Caleb's eyes without flinching. You altered safety reports that could have caused fires in schools full of children. Mason turned your anger into a weapon he could point at me. Sirens rose in the distance. The backup signal had finally reached the police. Mason struggled beneath Ethan, shouting for Caleb not to listen to her. But Caleb had already understood the truth of his own betrayal. He let the metal bar fall to the floor with a hollow clang. When police arrived minutes later, neither man resisted arrest. The cracks between them. The next morning brought only stiff formality. "Good morning, Mr. Cole. Your meeting is at 9. Thank you, Mr. Cole." The distance Ethan had built the night before now stood fully restored, brick by brick, between them. "You don't have to call me that," he finally said. "Isn't that what you are? My bodyguard?" He recognized the sting of his own words being handed back to him. Before he could respond, Mason appeared on the secure video screen, his expression tight and one-faced. Someone with executive-level access wiped the security footage from the nights those letters were delivered. Only 3 people have that kind of clearance. He read the names aloud. Mason Reed, Daniel Cross, the Chief Technology Officer, and Olivia herself. Could someone have copied her credentials? Ethan asked. Only if they had access to her private authentication device, Mason said. That device never leaves my office safe, Olivia said, frowning. Who knows the combination? Only Mason. And me. Ethan's gaze sharpened on the screen. Everyone says they're innocent before an investigation starts. I've worked beside her for 7 years, Mason snapped. That makes you trusted. It doesn't make you cleared. Olivia stepped between them, protective of the man who'd helped rebuild her company from ruin after her father's death, and furious that Ethan would even suggest otherwise after knowing him for a week. That's enough, she said, ending the call before either man could push further. You had no right to accuse him, she told Ethan. I'm investigating everyone with access. That includes people you trust. You've known him 7 days. I've known him 7 years. You thought you knew everyone who had your alarm code too. The words landed like a slap. Olivia stepped back, stung. You think trusting people makes me weak. I think trusting people blindly makes you vulnerable. So your solution is to trust no one at all. My solution keeps people alive. No, Ethan. Her voice was steady, even as her eyes glistened. Your solution keeps you alone. You hide behind this job because it lets you stop caring. Everyone becomes a principal, a route, a risk. That way you never have to lose anyone again. You don't know what you're talking about. I know you care about me, she said quietly, and that terrifies you more than Caleb Ross ever could. Ethan stepped closer, something raw moving behind his eyes. You're under my protection, he said. That's not an answer. It's the only one I can give you. For a long moment, they stood inches apart, Olivia willing him to deny what she'd said, Ethan wanting desperately to tell her the truth. Instead, he turned and walked out to check the perimeter, leaving her alone with tears she refused to let fall, and himself alone with a fear sharper than any gunfire he'd ever faced, the fear of loving her and failing to keep her safe anyway. Police vehicles lined the gravel drive. Investigators moved through the damaged cabin, cataloguing evidence. Mason and Caleb were already gone, taken into custody. Olivia stood alone on the dock, wrapped in a heavy coat, watching the sunrise ripple across the water. You shouldn't be out here by yourself, Ethan said, coming up behind her. I knew you'd find me. They stood in silence for a while before she spoke again. The documents were real. My father really did steal the original patent from Mason's father. The lawyers confirmed it. Yes, it was all buried in the old archive. What will you do? Tell the truth. All of it. The board will fight you. They already are. You could lose the company. I know, she said. I'm going to compensate Mason's family properly. Give his father the public credit he was owed. Open the patents so smaller companies can use the technology too. That could cost millions. Probably. Your investors will hate it. Definitely. For the first time, something close to a smile crossed Ethan's face. Olivia turned to face him fully. What happens now? To us, I mean. Not the investigation. I'll file my report today, he said, guarded. So you're leaving. It would be safer. For whom? He didn't answer. You were right about one thing, she said quietly. I was pretending not to be afraid. I was afraid of losing the company. afraid of the world discovering I wasn't as strong as everyone believed. She paused. But I'm also afraid of losing you. Ethan's careful composure finally cracked. Olivia, no, you demanded honesty from me from the very first night. Now you're going to hear it. I fell in love with the man who noticed when my hands were shaking, who stayed awake so I could sleep, who made terrible coffee and argued with me about everything and still stood between me and danger, even when I made his job impossible. My coffee is excellent. She laughed through unexpected tears. That's your response. It was the only part I felt safe arguing with. She searched his face. What are you actually afraid of, Ethan? That I'll love you more than I know how to protect you. You can't protect me from every loss, she said softly. You can't control every danger in the world, and loving someone was never a promise that nothing bad will happen. Then what is it a promise of? That we won't face it alone. The words reached something in him that had been frozen since the night he lost a man he couldn't save. For years, Ethan had believed that distance was the only way to survive loving someone. He understood now that the distance had never protected him from pain at all. It had only kept him from living. He reached out and touched her cheek. Once I file this report, he said, I'm no longer your bodyguard. Good. You're impossible to protect. So I've heard. And stubborn. So are you. And you ignore instructions. Only the unreasonable ones. He leaned in. Most of my instructions were entirely reasonable. Then perhaps we should discuss them. Over dinner. Is that an order? An invitation? For the first time since she'd met him, Ethan let himself smile completely, and then he kissed her, gently, without urgency, the quiet relief of two people who had finally stopped running from what they felt. Behind them, the first true sunlight broke over the hills and spread gold across the water. A new foundation. 6 months later, Sterling Tower looked different. The name on the building hadn't changed, but a new plaque now hung in the lobby. The Henry Reed Center for Sustainable Innovation. Public recognition, at last, for the man whose invention had built the company's earliest success. Olivia had held a press conference exposing her father's theft and taking full responsibility for correcting it. The stock had dropped sharply for 2 weeks. Then, unexpectedly, it hadn't just recovered, it had grown stronger. Hospitals and schools and clean energy advocates rallied behind her transparency. Employees praised her honesty. New investors, drawn by her integrity rather than despite it, began arriving. The company survived not by protecting its old image, but by finally giving up the lie underneath it. On a warm autumn evening, Olivia stood on a rooftop garden above Manhattan in a burgundy dress, the city glowing gold and endless beneath her. Ethan joined her carrying 2 cups of coffee, no earpiece in sight. He'd left private protection work behind entirely, building a new firm that helped schools and shelters and community organizations prepare for emergencies instead. Olivia took a sip and immediately made a face. This is terrible! You say that every time. Because you refuse to improve. I saved you from a falling chandelier once. That should count for something. It doesn't qualify you as a barista. He wrapped an arm around her waist. Your security director called me, by the way. Said you dismissed your driver and walked 3 blocks alone. It was daylight. That's not the same as sensible. You're not my bodyguard anymore. No. So stop giving me instructions. I'm your boyfriend now. It's personal concern. That sounds suspiciously similar to your old job. Fewer paperwork requirements, though. She leaned into him, and for a long while, they simply watched the city move beneath them. The same skyline that had once framed a rain-soaked threat, now holding something entirely different. Olivia had spent most of her life believing that strength meant building walls no one could reach past. Ethan had spent years believing survival meant never letting anyone close enough to lose. Together, in the space of half a year, they'd learned the opposite was true, that a meaningful life wasn't built by avoiding vulnerability, but by choosing courage in spite of it. Do you miss the safe house? Ethan asked eventually. The lake, maybe. The isolation? Never. The arguments? We still have plenty of those. Frequently, he agreed. She smiled. I miss who we became out there. We didn't leave those people behind, Ethan said. You're still impossible. She nudged his shoulder. And you're still afraid of smiling. Not anymore. The wind moved softly through the rooftop trees as Ethan reached into his coat. Olivia eyed him warily. What are you doing? Something extremely dangerous. That's not encouraging. He drew out a small velvet box and lowered himself to one knee. City lights blurred through the sudden tears in her eyes. Olivia Sterling, he said, you are the only person who's ever made me want a future more than I feared losing it. I can't promise life will always be safe. I can't promise I'll know how to protect you from every hard day that comes. He opened the box, revealing a simple diamond ring. But I can promise to stand beside you through all of them. Not in front of you, not behind you, beside you. She laughed through her tears. Is that your proposal? I had a longer speech prepared. It's already taking too long. He smiled. Will you marry me? Yes. The word escaped before he'd even finished asking. Yes, Ethan. He rose and slid the ring onto her finger, and she wrapped her arms around him as the skyline shimmered beneath them and a soft rain began to fall, gentle enough to catch the glow of the rooftop lamps.